I started a joke. And oh my gosh, sorry, I'm here. I've got Robin Gibb on my mind. I have a friend who was in a tribute band to him and was on the AXS channel the other night, and I can't get that song out of my head. Anyway, forgive me, because we are here again to talk about how to get more out of your breakup than just heartache. I'm Tommy Toole, and we're moving through the modules. This is Closure and the Post-Divorce Process, Module 1, but we are in Lesson 4, the Ideal Divorce. So here's what you're going to discover in this lesson today, the big picture. You'll learn the 3 behaviors that make a divorce ideal, the key ingredients that are necessary in order for an ideal divorce to exist. I'll give you 2 cliches to live by, and we'll answer the question, how long does the ideal divorce last? What? It doesn't last forever? You have to work at it in order to maintain it. I'm just going to drop that subtle hint. But yeah, that's why we're asking the question, is it an oxymoron? So what makes a divorce ideal? Well, if anyone had told me 7 years earlier that I would have been happily remarried and comfortable running next to my ex on a treadmill at the local gym, I would have said, yeah, right, when the devil wears ice skates. And I've seen him do it too. He's, does a little cute pirouette. I can't even say the word. Figure 8. It's pretty cute. But anyway, yeah, you get to see that when you've been to hell and back. So 2 cliches to live by are when hell freezes over. Yeah, hell does freeze over, and stranger things have happened. Those are the 2 cliches to live by. Because as you go through your divorce, there will be things that will surprise the heck out of you. And anyone who says, oh yeah, when hell freezes over, well, yeah, you get to experience that. Yeah, because I never would have thought that my ex-husband would have jumped on the treadmill next to me and we would have been comfortable running for about 3 miles. The amazing thing is, first of all, he wasn't even a runner. But the even more stellar thing about it is that we really didn't think anything of it at that point. We had achieved what I call the ideal divorce, at least for a while anyway. So again, there's a reason why I asked the question, the ideal divorce, is it an oxymoron? So oxymorons are words that by themselves are contradictions. But when we combine them, they have meanings such as like jumbo shrimp, fresh prunes. I love that one, fresh prunes. Or same difference, just as is ideal divorce. So the words ideal and divorce aren't usually used in the same sentence. Because if you have an ideal divorce, then maybe you should have been married. I don't know. Just saying. But put together, they become this sort of oxymoron, right? The ideal divorce. So the ideal divorce is just that. It's an ideal. Whether you believe it or not, there is such a thing. But my experience has been that it comes in waves and it can be fleeting. So what makes a divorce ideal? 3 behaviors that make a divorce ideal are being flexible with each other, for one, being supportive of the children, being able to get along with each other's current spouses. So those 3 things, in my opinion, I think set you up for on your way to the gold star with ideal divorce. So we all want the ideal divorce because it will save our children a lot of heartache in the long run. That's reason enough to want it. But because we are human and divorce is an emotional process, what makes sense doesn't always happen right away. We know we want to have peace, but sometimes it isn't possible. So the key ingredient to the ideal divorce recipe, there's 3, is time, maturity, and personal growth. So I don't know. People always, when they ask me my age, I'm always like, well, I kind of have 2 ages. I have my physical age, and then I have my mental age. And I think my mental age has been stunted. I'm still somewhere around 19. Because life to me is, a lot of fun, and I just like to be silly. But so in my case, I needed a lot of time, maturity, and personal growth. So let me say it one more time. Show you the slide. So the key ingredients that make ideal divorce are time, maturity, and personal growth. So how much, Tommy? How much time, personal growth, and maturity do you need? Well, in my case, it was a flippin' boatload. Yeah, I needed a lot. I need a lot of all three. So the maturity level in my case wasn't reached until there was support and understanding within our current relationships. And that didn't really happen until he ended the relationship with the woman with whom he had an affair. So you see, they got married, but the relationship ended after about 5 years. She never could really understand his role as an involved father, and she, kind of wanted him all to herself. And I was a bone of contention for her. Imagine that, he had a prior life, and she was a bone of contention for me. So sort of ironic, don't you think? And I never reached she and I never reached an understanding, and I really am doubtful we ever could have. But thankfully, nature took its course, and their unstable relationship finally ended. You might say it kind of toppled into the ocean, sort of like this barge here. Kind of went down like the Titanic. And I'm sorry to say that sometimes not everyone can reach the ideal divorce. That's not to say you won't have some level of ideal or peace, but when there has been a third party to your divorce, I don't think you should really expect it. I think you're kind of asking too much from your ex if you were the one who cheated. And there's there's a lot of walls to climb. I kind of think of it as like that boot camp wall that, you have to climb, the one that separates the boys from the men. So I'm not saying don't try to strive for the ideal divorce. I'm just saying if that was your situation, it might be a little harder. So how and when will things ever change between you and your ex? Well, in my case, remove the catalyst and the equation and things will change. Now, that sounds kind of bleak, I know, but there is good news. So if you were someone like me who kind of was I hate to use the word victim, but victim of an adulterous affair, here's a fun little factoid and statistic for you. So look at this. Marriage as a result of adulterous relationships. The blue part is, the universe of that statistic of adulterous relationships. Only 10% of those actually result in marriage. So what does that mean? So of that 10%, another 10% actually make it and they survive. So said another way, that's like 90% failure rate for those who get married. So 10% of another 10% make it, or 90% fail. So that's kind of a fun little statistic. I think when I first saw that, I was somewhat giddy. I'm not going to lie. I was somewhat giddy. So be patient, because odds are you will outlast the catalyst, right? So that's my little point about that. So final word on achieving the ideal divorce: if adultery was part of the game changer. There is such a thing as the ideal divorce if you have a forgiving heart and the mistress hits the road. You will experience it. So likewise, achieving the ideal divorce won't be on your list of priorities if you are a battered spouse, or you didn't have children, because there's really no reason to communicate after a divorce if you don't have kids, right? Okay, so now that I've got you all worked up and pondering, what's the use of having an ideal divorce? What's the use of even trying? Allow me to make this point. Most people, divorced or not, want calm and peace in their life. I mean, I don't think I know anybody who doesn't, right? Divorce strips that inner peace temporarily. I think you all know what I'm talking about. And this is why you should strive for getting along. And if along the way you have a better relationship after your marriage than before, then here's to you. So where do you start? That's the big question. Unfortunately, people don't really know where to start. It's sort of a give and take process, though, and if both of you aren't willing to share in the process, it won't happen. But, I think, like I said, everybody wants the peace and calm. So eventually you'll get there. You just have to kind of get in step again with that dance number the two of you are going through. So it starts like this, with a simple gesture. That could be like a phone call or a compliment. And then the gesture turns into a conversation. And then another simple gesture is made. And you're kind of on your way. So my next slide gives you kind of an example of what I'm talking about. Remember that book, Go Dog Go? I don't know about this, but the simple gesture, she's, hello, hello. Do you like my hat? I do not like it. Okay, well, goodbye. I mean, at this point, I think if I were her, I'd probably flip him off. But that wasn't the case. This is Go Dog Go. And she keeps trying. So, like, for example, the next slide. She keeps trying until at the very end, she's got the party hat on. And he's like, oh, I like that hat. I like that party hat. And then they ride off into the sunset together, right? So it's just a process. It's my little funny, but fortunately, you got to keep trying, and then you might get somewhere. So just remember, it starts with a gesture, then a conversation, and then another gesture. Hopefully it's a good gesture and not one of those flipping you the finger things. But I don't know. I always feel that people can work through this stuff. It's just kind of cyclical. Okay, so my point is that the process starts sort of slow and sometimes easier than you might expect. But here's the thing. Just because you are on better terms with each other, don't forget everyone else in your circle of influence, like your parents, your friends, your siblings, they won't be on the same page right out of the gates. In fact, it might seem quite odd to them that you are speaking again with your ex, right? Some might hold your grudges. I have an older sister who's very protective of me, and she holds grudges, so I love her for that. But at the same time, sometimes it doesn't work in my favor. Because they love you, they don't want to see you get hurt again by this person, and so it's their way of getting your back. But just remember this simple concept. We teach those close to us how to treat our ex. If we are forgiving, they will forgive too. If we are not forgiving, they will not forgive. So you definitely are driving this bus. If you're nice to your ex, your family will want that for the kids most of the time. It was amazing how my interactions with my ex-husband changed how my family saw him. We weren't getting along for so long, and then we did. We started getting along. He started coming over and coming in the house and visiting, for a little while. It's funny, but after I was okay with him, my family started to accept him again. I learned that friends and family feed off your interactions. So again, we teach our families when it's okay to be nice. So just kind of be mindful of that. One morning after I'll give you an example though of a situation we had. One morning after my parents had stayed the night, my ex had come early with the kids. He was bringing them over, and it was my turn. We were making the switch in the morning, and I took them to school. So my parents kind of watched this whole process and seemed to kind of be in silent praise of the whole situation. And I think at this point it had been over 6 years since my parents and my ex had actually even spoken or even seen each other. My parents were quite accepting of him as a person again. And this is because I was accepting of him. Once he left the woman he left me for, he was truly a different person. He was happier, friendlier, and much more flexible. So here's the thing too. The minute you are back at odds with your ex and conveying all this to your family and friends, just remember they aren't going to ping pong back and forth with their opinion of your ex like you are. So don't be mad at them if they've suddenly turned over a new leaf with your ex, and maybe they're calling him over and asking him to come over and watch the sports game or something. I don't know. My family didn't do that, but and now you two of you are back at odds. That's a very that's something for you to kind of think about. So don't be sore or bent when they don't side with you every single time after this point. So that's just something to be aware of. You have to take culpability and either don't share so much or pick and choose your battles with the ex. So, okay, moving on. Enough said about that. So, how long does the ideal divorce last? Does the ideal divorce even last at all? Well, I'll let you be the judge of that for yourself. You can have it, and if it's important to you, you'll maintain it. Your post-marriage relationship will gravitate in the direction you are most committed to. If it is important to you to maintain the peace and stop the cannons from misfiring, then you'll get there. If not, well, then you won't get there. It's pretty basic. Either you will or you won't. Here's my word of caution. Don't be fooled by the calmness. It's like, look at that poor little dandelion. It's going to get it in just a second. So it's only temporary, and there's always the chance it can change. So in this picture of, the calm before the storm. So it never seems to fail. Just when you think you've got the ideal divorce thing working for you, somebody gets stupid, and all good deeds go unnoticed, and in a flash, the tempo of your relationship can change. I mean, just when you think you've got the ideal thing working for you too. Divorce is like that. There's never really a rational reason for the inconsistent behavior either. There are cycles of these good and bad times. I don't mean to sound cynical, but personalities are what they are, and people can be stubborn. It's just human nature, and it is a fact. It is what it is. I can tell you disagreements will exist as long as you both are raising children together. In the beginning of my divorce, when we had disagreements, it was all about who could hold out the longest and carry out their threat first. As your divorce ages, the standoffs don't seem to last as long, and you realize the energy it takes to carry out any threat. You figure the other is just blowing off steam, and soon you will reach an understanding. As such, the cycle ensues. So here's a tip. The only thing and the only person you have control over is you. How you decide to conduct yourself is 100% within your control. And let's face it, there will always be objections to your actions by your ex. But you don't have to be confrontational. You just have to put your WTF, I'm not going to say it, your WTF hat on, and let the dung beetle do their job, okay? That's what I'm saying. Just let the dung beetle do their job, because the minute you try to become a salesman and try to handle the objection, validate it, and point out all the benefits of your idea, why it's so much better than theirs, they already have their mind made up because of the mere fact that the idea is coming from you. So don't waste your breath. Don't chase after the dung. Okay? Don't do it. Let it go, because you'll end up like this. And is it really worth fighting over the dung? Just acknowledge, validate, then do what you feel is best for the situation at hand. Can you say passive aggressive? If you get stuck, ask yourself, will this really be important in a week from now? Or another question you can ask yourself is this: what is the best thing for the kids? Put your own pride aside and ask, is this really best for them? Then do whatever that is, because here's the thing, disagreements will exist as long as you both are raising children together. I mean, that would happen if you were married too. In the beginning of my divorce, when we had disagreements every time we talked. I mean, it was just a given. Every time we talked, we were going to disagree. That's no exaggeration. I'm telling you. I know you know what I'm talking about. You're living it right now. At that time, it was all about who could hold out the longest and carry out their threat first. And as I said earlier, as your divorces ages, the frequency of these things, they just don't last as long, and you realize there's so much energy that goes into it, and you just figure out that the other person is just blowing off steam, and pretty soon you'll reach an understanding in time. So to wrap this up, from the toolbox, the best way to deal with the ups and downs of divorce is to help promote a bad memory. Just, develop a bad memory and you'll be okay. And that comes naturally to me. So things don't bother me too long because I always forget about it. And I recommend you do that too. So let the stuff go and try not to hang on to it for too long. You don't want to be one of those dung beetles, right? Carrying the dung around. The stress will eat you up if you are not careful. Realize that you can have the ideal divorce if all the conditions exist, but there is no guarantee it will last. It is cyclical. Issues come up all the time that can change these conditions if your ex is in your life on any kind of regular basis. I hope this hasn't been too much of a downer, but this is why divorce sucks. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I always say, if you didn't have the conflict resolution skills mastered in marriage, what makes you think it'll be any easier in divorce? Here's the good news, though. After a few years of divorce, you will get better at these skills. You will have to in order to survive. So, thanks for joining me. I'll see you in my next video.